Hello, I'm Jane Farrell. I'm the facilitator for the info session this evening. It's 1 minute after 6:30, so thank you for being on time. And I think we're going to get going because we got a lot of room, a lot of things to cover in the next hour and a half. So I am, introducing myself. We're going to hear from some city staff about warming centers, and we're going to have lots of time to hear your questions and concerns about the warming centers, including offers of support or just inquiries and questions about how sites are decided, located, what services are provided, what the plans are for community engagement. So all of that will come through on this meeting. But first, we're going to have a few land acknowledgements. So if we can go to the next slide. We will be hearing from a City of Toronto staffer, I believe.
Nurjahan.
Nurjahan will be
Thank you,
reading.
Jane. Thank you, Jane, and welcome everybody this evening. I'll be reading the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurjahan. The next slide. And this will be read by another staff person from the City of Toronto. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Charlene Wilson. Hi to everyone. I'll be reading the African Ancestral Acknowledgement. The City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent.
Thank you, Charlene. Next slide. Okay, so there's going to be a few slides like this, and they'll appear later during the Q&A that really tell people how to dial into this Zoom meeting. Our tech person, Andrea Bennett, do you want to explain anything here, Andrea?
Thank you, Jane. If you have any problems hearing and need assistance from an audio perspective, please do dial in with your telephone. The number is on the screen and the webinar ID is also.
Okay, thank you. You can pop something into the chat if you have some trouble. We might be able to catch it that way too. So we want you to understand that this is this meeting is recorded because we post it on the Warming Center website eventually, so that people who couldn't be at this meeting could watch this and take it in if that's what they'd like to do. So in order to make it able to be posted on our website, we ask that nobody identify themselves by name, their address, or their contact information. If you're asking a question, you can say, I'm Jennifer, or I'm Keith. But you don't have to. I will call on people and you'll be unmuted. And certainly don't ideally talk about where you live or give any contact information, just because it makes it hard for us to post this because it has to be anonymized. Of course, you can contact us at any time on email, weatherresponsetio@gmail.com. Next. I will turn it over to Andrea to explain accessibility and Zoom protocols.
Wonderful, thank you. All content on the screen will be described by the panelists for those that require that. As Jane mentioned, we are recording this meeting and closed captioning will be added when it's uploaded to the website. If you do require closed captioning in this meeting, please click on the CC button in your Zoom controls, and that will enable captions. During the Q&A period, please do submit your questions or comments. You can use the raise hand button in your Zoom controls, click on that, and we will call on you verbally. You may also submit your questions in the Q&A box, and those written questions will be added to the queue.
Yeah.
If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can email us at support@kingevents.ca for assistance.
Thank you, Andrea. Next. Okay, so this is just for everyone, even the people sort of as resource person on this call, as well as participants. You know, this is a virtual public info session. We are trying to have as many people speak as possible, to share the mic and to answer all the questions and hear the concerns. And what we strive to do is be respectful in all our words and actions and be patient with technology. As I said, to share the microphone, listen, actively participate, speak from your own perspective. This is very important. And to respect, you know, personal confidentiality, and, you know, to be very explicit about this, the City of Toronto has policies about this. Indeed, racist or prejudicial, derogatory, discriminatory, and hostile comments will not be tolerated, and you will be muted if your commenting veers into that direction. We've never had to do that, but it might happen. So I'm just sort of laying down a code of conduct so we can all strive for it and know what's expected here. Next slide, please. Okay, we're pretty much going to move into the presenters now. You've met me. I'm the community engagement facilitator. I'm with my colleague, Pauline. I answer the Gmail questions that are sent into weatherresponseto@gmail.com. In addition to, you know, phone calls, stakeholder meetings, whatever's needed to try to build that relationship between yourselves as the community and businesses, as well as the shelter providers or the operators, city staff, and so on. So I try to hold that space in the middle so everyone can be heard and understood. And we follow up on, as promised, actions and decisions, and hold people to account wherever we can. So I'm going to throw it over to the two presenters. So Loretta Ramadan, who is here on screen, and Milton Barrera, who should also be on screen at this time. Milton, please turn your camera on as we're moving into the presentation. But I think, Loretta, you're going to lead us out. If you can introduce yourself and tell people what you do, your title, and just to tell them who you are.
Hi, my name's Loretta Ramadan. I'm the director of our infrastructure planning and engagement unit. Our unit leads the siting, planning, and development of new locations for warming centers and shelters. And we also lead the engagement work. Pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you. Next slide. I guess we should have met. We'll meet Milton when it's his slides. All right. So an agenda, just very quickly. You know, the purpose of the meeting today is to provide an overview of the warming centers, including the services and supports that are offered, to respond to community questions, concerns, and offers of support, and ultimately, you know, contribute to the success of this service by enhancing relationships and connection to the community. We'll have about 45 minutes of presentations, and that leaves us about 60 to 70 minutes of Q&A. All right, Loretta, take it away.
Thank you for joining us this evening to hear more about the warming centers. Can we move to the next slide, please? Toronto operates the largest shelter system in the country. As of October 2023, the city is sheltering approximately 10,700 people each night. This includes approximately 9,000 people accessing overnight emergency shelters, as well as 1,700 people sheltered throughout bridging hotels and programs supported by the Red Cross. While housing is the ultimate solution to homelessness, shelters are necessary to fill the gap when people are in immediate housing crisis. Despite the large number of clients supported through the city's shelter system, the need for emergency shelter has significantly increased over the past 2 years. This is due to many factors, including insufficient affordable housing supply, increased costs of living and inflation, inadequate wage and income supports, and an increase in refugee claimants arriving in Toronto now that border restrictions have eased. Despite adding more than 1,100 shelter spaces last year, the system is at capacity and we are turning away hundreds of people each night. We do expect demand to continue to rise throughout the cold winter months. Warming centers focus on getting and keeping vulnerable residents inside. They are only activated during specific temperature thresholds, which we will go over later in the presentation. Drop-ins do not provide overnight accommodations, but they are available during the daytime and provide a range of services that may include food, healthcare, showers, laundry, information, referrals, and social and recreational activities to people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. 24-hour respite sites prioritize ease of access to rest-in spaces, meals, and service referrals. They are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and are pet friendly. Shelters provide emergency accommodation and wraparound support services that assist people to move into housing. All locations are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and provide meals and laundry, access to harm reduction, and mental and physical health supports, counseling, case managers, to assist with developing permanent housing plans, and assessment and referrals to other community services as needed. Other city services we have, in addition to shelter, respite, drop-ins, and winter spaces that city offers to those experiencing homelessness, include street outreach. These are staff through Streets to Homes who work to connect with individuals living outside to build trusting relationships, help address immediate health and safety needs, and to find permanent housing. We have Housing Help, which are nonprofit agencies that help people find and keep housing to avoid eviction. And Housing Help services are also available in most shelter and many drop-ins as well. We also offer pet services, which is a no-charge service for pets of people staying at shelter sites. The city also operates public washrooms and showers, including some that have been winterized and are open year-round. Information on services for those experiencing homelessness, including warming centers, can be found on the city's website at www.toronto.ca/homelesshelp. And now I'll hand it over to Milton.
Thank you, Loretta. And good evening, everyone. My name is Milton Barrera, Director with Outreach and Access, as the section name implies. I am responsible for the outreach teams, such as Encampment Office and Streets to Homes, and Access, such as Central Intake, which is our telephone system to access shelter spaces or respite spaces. Next slide. Oh, actually, go back. Sorry, my apologies. So in the next few slides, I will be walking you through the warming centers, an overview of the warming centers and the current need for temporary accommodations within shelter support and housing administration provides. I anticipate that with the next few slides, I'll be able to address some of the questions you may have regarding warming centers, and if not, no worries. As Jane said at the end, we'll be here to answer any questions that you may have that may have not been answered in the content of this presentation. Next slide, please. So on October 17th, the city announced its details on its 2023-24 winter services plan to ensure a safe and welcoming space for people experiencing homelessness during our winter weather season, which is from November 15th to April 15th of 2024. The winter services plan is designed to be adaptive and evolve to respond to the changing needs of people, specifically those vulnerable Torontonians throughout this coming winter. Preparation for winter didn't start. It started actually at the beginning of the year, and many locations were identified, and resulting in 4 warming center locations and a 24-hour respite. We have also incorporated some of the feedback we heard from our last winter season to improve planning and coordination of services. The slide here, as you see, it's really 4 components or pillars of our winter service plan. First one is maintaining and adding space in our existing Toronto shelter system. We've added or will be adding up to 180 spaces this winter season. Warming centers, activating 4 warming centers in a 24-hour respite. Enhanced street outreach services. So Streets of Homes, they add teams whenever we hit extreme cold weather threshold. And then last but more importantly, or equally importantly, is the additional up to 274 units through supportive homes and social housing units. Next slide, please. So as indicated, warming centers is a key component to our city's winter service plan. So what exactly are warming centers? And I really appreciate you taking the time this evening to join this information session, so that way we can give you factual information. Often there is misinformation or a perception about warming centers. So warming centers will be activated when temperatures reach -5 degrees Celsius, and or whenever there's an Environment and Climate Change Canada, or sorry, Environment and Climate Change Canada issue a winter weather event warning, such as a blizzard. So it could be -2 with a blizzard, we would activate the warming centers. From past experiences, you may know this as an extreme cold weather alert. There have been changes to ensure that we can operate these warming centers, again, based on community feedback and through various agencies, to activate at -5. So that's a change for this year. Once activated, warming centers remain open 24 hours a day until it's determined that we'll be closing the sites. Important to note is that when we close a warming center, we stop admissions. That doesn't mean that we actually close and everybody has to leave. Often warming centers stay open for 2 to 3 days on average after we decide to close a warming center. And that's because we want to ensure that the folks that are inside the warming center have been referred to a indoor space, i.e. A shelter or a respite. Because the last thing we want is to send people back. We don't want to be sending anyone to the streets. Operation hours of the warming center, they open at 5 p.m. and they remain open for 24 hours a day until we decide it's time to deactivate. A reason for deactivation would be that we start getting better weather, and as such, we would start deactivating the warming center to close. But the emphasis I want to put is that we aren't telling people to leave. We are stopping admissions, but securing space for the folks that are indoors. Next slide, please. Warming centers provide a safe, warm indoor space for individuals to rest, access snacks, washroom facilities, and referrals to emergency shelters and or other community services. So it's kind of to maintain flow. We often look at folks that may be eligible for specialized programs within their shelter system that would be better served in those spaces, and we make a referral into those spaces. In order to keep a flow within our warming centers. Individuals don't need to contact central intake to access a warming center. Walk-ins are always welcome. All staff are trained in harm reduction, de-escalation, client support, IPAC, infection prevention and control tools, first aid, and also have harm reduction supplies in the event, such as naloxone, in the event we need to respond to an overdose. In addition, staff also conduct patrols and needle pickup in and around the premises. It's really just doing a perimeter walk just to make sure everything is okay in the exterior of the perimeter. Next slide, please. So where are the 4 warming centers located this winter? 4 of them, one located at 136 Spadina, one in Scarborough at 885 Scarborough Golf Club Road, 75 Elizabeth, just north of City Hall, and one in North York at 15 Olive Avenue. 136, just to go over the warming centers, 136 Spadina is a warming center for all genders. Elizabeth is also a location for all genders. Actually, all of them are for all genders, so I'll just stop going through one by one. The other thing important to note is that all of them are also pet friendly, which is something we've also heard back from service users. Back to you, Loretta.
Thanks. Staff have worked with city divisions, real estate broker, faith-based, and community groups to identify buildings since the end of last winter in April. And they've been working to identify and secure the warming center locations and 24-hour respite sites to be used in response to this winter. This included creating a working group to review properties that could be leveraged to make more winter space available. Through this work, we reviewed city assets and investigated properties owned by city-run agencies, in addition to properties that might have come through real estate brokers or other faith-based agencies. We also issued a public request for expression of interest to call for space to anyone who might have had a space available for this purpose. This year, staff investigated approximately 130 properties across Toronto for potential warming center use. This year's warming centers will offer approximately 170 spaces during cold temperatures. Staff will continue to explore opportunities to secure additional sites across the city because we do recognize that there will be a continued need for space, and the 170 may not be enough for the winter. And we'll continue to work to maximize the spaces that are available for those that are in need. A question many ask is, how do we choose a site? What criteria we look for? And some of the main criteria the city looks for when searching for warming center sites are that they are located across the city of Toronto, because homelessness is everywhere. We looked for them to be available for a potential activation daily, any time from November 15th to April 15th. We sought sites that could accommodate approximately 30 to 60 cots. We wanted to ensure that there was sufficient infrastructure for a toilet for every 15 clients. We needed to make sure that sites had appropriate fire and life safety provisions, that some spaces were accessible to those with mobility challenges, and that there were spaces that could be available to accommodate pets. We also like to ensure that spaces do have easy access to transit. Shelters are located within communities, not only because it's important for people staying at these locations to be close to community resources, but it is also important to note that from a bylaw and zoning perspective, they are allowed in primarily in areas zoned as residential or mixed commercial residential use. We're not permitted to open a shelter in an area zoned as an industrial or employment area. This often means that they're located to other community services, such as libraries and community centers and healthcare services.
Thank you.
I'll hand it back to you, Jane. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Loretta. So just a couple notes on how the community engagement works. So this is an info session where clearly all are invited from across the city, and we augment the engagement process by through our websites and by inviting people to stay in touch by signing up for regular email updates that also will tell anyone who signs up when the warming centers are being activated. We also do outreach and work with residents associations, condo associations, key stakeholders, business improvement areas to ensure that we've got strong, productive, efficient communication lines to sort of answer questions, get feedback, act on concerns, and track and respond to any kind of inquiry or request. So it's a work in progress. We sort of respond as we can, as needed. But the community engagement team is myself and a couple of colleagues who are here to do what we can to be in communication with you, answer questions, and address concerns. The key email to everyone to remember is the weatherresponseto@gmail.com. It's also where you can sign up for the notifications. We have received many email questions already in advance of this meeting, which we'll be getting to in the Q&A period of time. There was a lot of similar questions, so we're going to group them and aggregate them according to subject areas. But that's what we're up to on community engagement. Next slide. And here we are at the Q&A. So we have about an hour, almost exactly an hour. Andrea, I'm going to ask you to just review with the attendees how to ask a question.
Thanks, Jane. So as mentioned, there are two ways to ask questions. The first is if you wish to submit a typed question in the Q&A box, please click on Q&A in your Zoom controls. They will be put into a queue and answered as time permits. The second way is to click the raise hand button in your Zoom controls to verbally ask your question. We will then unmute your line. You'll be prompted to ask your question to the panelists. For anyone that has joined the webinar by phone, please dial *6 to raise and to lower your hand and get on the speakers list.
*6 or *9?
I apologize. *9.
*9. So 3 ways. Q&A box, and we've already received some questions there already, which is great. Thank you. Raise your hand if you're on a video or joined on Zoom. And if you've dialed in on your phone, *9 to raise your hand. You'll be asked, sort of like, Carmen, you have the floor. Please ask your question or offer your comment. So away we go. I think it makes sense actually to start with one of the email questions that was very commonly asked. That people were, we have a screen here, a slide about the Q&A period, but I'm more or less kind of covered that content. Again, there's a recording. Please don't identify yourself, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A and getting to as many questions as possible, often aggregating because similar questions often come up for whatever site, and we will do our best to get to all of the questions. So let's throw that other slide up about how to ask. There you go. Okay, so yep, perfect. I want to start with the question that is very common. We've received many of this question in email, which is people wanting to know why they weren't consulted or canvassed for their opinions on whether or not this site should be, this warming center should be sited where it is. Loretta, you did ask, you did answer the question about how sites are selected. Why aren't people and local residents canvassed for their opinions on this? That could be answered by Milton or Loretta, but many people are wondering why they haven't had the chance to be consulted on the site location.
Thanks, Jane. I can start. So in December 2017, City Council updated the process to secure new homeless services through our Shelter Infrastructure Plan and Progress Report, which included a new emergency shelter development process. Through this process, delegated authority was provided to approve sites, provided they met specific criteria. Further authorities were also given in November of 2021, which authorized the city to enter into new or amend existing agreements that might be necessary to maintain or add additional respite spaces and shelter beds, or respond to urgent or unanticipated needs for spaces. This was done to help speed up and depoliticize the shelter development process. And it strengthens the city's ability to secure properties in Toronto's competitive market, which is also consistent with the more human rights-based approach to housing and related services for vulnerable residents. it's also in alignment with the review of our shelter siting process that highlighted that new shelters have to comply with zoning bylaws, which is what I spoke to earlier when I spoke to you about the zoning bylaws. And it doesn't require approval from local communities, and as such, sites can be developed as of right. Having said that, community engagement does remain a crucial component of our process, and the city is committed to engaging with communities and focusing on efforts on how best to support and integrate sites into neighborhoods. In alignment with consultant review, our engagement and planning process is focused on information sharing, community dialogue, and addressing community concerns once a location is secured, as opposed to focusing on where the shelter can be located. We do depend a lot on the market, available properties. It's a competitive market out there. So we work towards securing the spaces first and then engaging. And Jane, you were hired as the facilitator from Words and Deeds to be connecting with the community. And this info session tonight is more or less one of the first ways that we will be engaging with the communities. And we do have an email account where questions and concerns can be sent. It's weatherresponseto@gmail.com.
Great, thank you, Loretta. Yeah, okay, so the next most common, and there's a number of them in the chat already, question concerns. A lot of people feel they're very curious about how safety and security issues are going to be addressed on an ongoing and proactive basis outside the center. So, you know, people are wondering, you know, what can be done, who do they contact, how is it managed, the interface between people who might be using the warming center and people in the neighborhood, if there are activities, you know, people are maybe seeing things, maybe they don't know if it's related to the warming center or not, but how does the warming center work safety and security issues into its operations and planning at the ground level? I'm not sure if that's a Milton or Loretta question, but
Yeah, no, that's me, Jane, and I may also Monica Waldman, who's the manager for Operations Support Services, may also tag into the response. In short, the city takes health and safety as a paramount concern, not only for our community partners, but of course for the residents and staff that are in the warming center. With that being said, as I indicated previously, there will be security guards attached to each warming center. So there'll be guards that are stationed at the interior of the warming center, but also doing a patrol around the warming center. Any incidences that are identified, security will take immediate action. Again, it's going to be case by case. We do use a client person strength approach where depending on the circumstances, there'll be a follow-up that may occur. In regards to where it gets a little bit tricky is where incidences are occurring off the property, right? So let's say at a lobby of a condominium or a parking lot that is not part of the perimeter of the warming center. We want to work with the community. There is staff 24/7. You know, the warming centers will make sure that people are aware of who to contact should there be a situation. But ultimately, what I typically tell individuals or the community is, if you see an incident and it's serious, please report it. And by reporting it, it means calling 911, because Toronto Police, again, will support us. You know, we have conversations with Toronto Police if all of a sudden we see situations arising, so we can be proactive. But, you know, it's better to report it one of the things we often see is we get a lot of information coming from the community about, oh, we're seeing this, and then when we connect with the local police division, they tell us that it's not actually being reported. So one of the things we always strongly encourage is report it, right? So that way we can work collectively with the Toronto Police to respond to the situation. The other piece too is, we have a handout that's available for public reference as to who to call based on situations, right? So there's no wrong way of calling, as long as it's not an emergency. Often calling 311 is a good way because they'll relay the call to the appropriate division. Often people may think it's SSHA who has overview of a certain area, but it may end up being transportation services or parks and recs. So calling 311 is also a good way of reporting any situation that you may see. I'm going to pause here, but Monica, anything you wanted to add on that piece?
Sure. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, with any program that we have, whether it's a warming center, a respite or a shelter program, we do, all agencies that run these programs have their own version of a good neighbor policy. And when somebody comes into the program and is accessing a bed, they go through an intake process. And during that process, staff review with them the expectations that we all have to coexist and to be good neighbors, and what that means in terms of activity outside of the building. In addition to that, and I think it was mentioned earlier, that we also have Streets to Homes that runs street outreach services across the city, trying to build rapport with folks who are living outdoors or in encampments, as well as the encampment office that also comes in to deal with encampments in a little bit more of an enforcement approach. We prefer the social service approach. And really, the weather is not great in the winter, and we want to bring all of the folks who are out in those encampments, and those encampments are all across Toronto. We want to bring folks inside to a safe space where they can engage with staff, get support, get warm, and be safe from the elements.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monica. Okay, so just to clarify, we're going to go for a live question now. We're going to unmute someone, but before we get there, there are a couple of questions that are very easy to answer, sort of yes, no. Some of that content was covered in the presentations from staff, but there was a lot of information to absorb. So yes, people can stay overnight in the warming center if there are temperatures below -5. That's the point. They don't come in and warm up until 9 p.m. and then it closes and they got to go out in the cold. Absolutely not. So these can operate 24/7 and for several days in a row while the cold snap is being experienced. So I just wanted to get that answered. But we are going to now ask Mohan, who has had their hand up for a bit, to be unmuted by Andrea. And you have the floor, Mohan, for your question or concern. Can you say hello? Can I hear you?
Hello?
Mohan, are you there?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, hi. What is your, you have the floor. What is your question about the warming centers?
Good evening. So the question I had is I'm a property owner from Mona Lisa Residence, which is the building right behind the warming center located at 15 Olive Avenue. There's been a petition form signed by a lot of property owners from my building in regards to the selection of this warming center location. I think the census from the building owner, the property owners were, we are really concerned with so many homeless people kind of coming, gathering around this location. And because Finch subway station is a quite clustered area, we are in general concerned with how this cause like a drop in value in our property, and also with regards to how the level of difficulty that asked for a number of property owners trying to find tenants who are now reconsidering their options because the existence of this warming center during the winter time. Can you answer that?
Yes, no, those are good, and we've touched on some of that content. But you know, the question about property values and the number of people that will be around were present in a number of the questions answered before the session by email. So I'd like to ask either Suhal, Ahmed, or Milton to address the questions of what's the influx of people that might come into a neighborhood because of a warming center? Would it be noticeable? Does it bring traffic and congestion? Other people have asked about that. Although I think if you have a car, you might not be needing a warming center. But what's the impact that we know of and when a warming center opens in terms of the numbers of people, and does it have an effect on real estate values? Suhal.
Yeah, I think our hope is to get people safely indoors. So we are trying to ensure that the number of people at the site are based on our capacity. If we don't have capacity at that site, then we will hopefully find opportunities to get through buses or another means to another site where we do have space. I think we're not aware of any evidence of property values being impacted. However, I think this issue is really a human issue. We looked, as Loretta said, we looked at a lot of properties. These are the only 4 sites we were able to find. And we found they're very late in the cycle, really close to winter. We don't have the opportunity to go out and find additional sites. And based on the city bylaws, we have to site shelters close in residential areas and not in employment or industrial areas, which means that by default, warming centers will be close to businesses, community centers, schools, and daycares. And we must all work together to really help address this pressing issue. These are people who are incredibly vulnerable. They're at risk of a magnitude of health issues by being outside in the cold. And this service will help bring them indoors and provide much needed care and help them in their journey towards permanent housing and other more long-term permanent solutions to these issues. I think that is the focus of SSHA and the work we're doing through these warming center sites.
Thank you. Suhal, I want to ask as a follow-up, because we have it on the Q&A, and again, it's been asked in different ways through the email in advance of the meeting. Is someone noticing that shelters have apparently, I mean, they write that have been over capacity for weeks, and there's close to 300 people turned away at each night, according to what they've heard. And so they're asking that with only 170 cots in a warming center space, if this is, you know, a built-in sort of inadequacy, and why would we be doing a plan that doesn't even provide enough spaces? So several people are asking about that. I mean, it's a huge need. It doesn't appear that it's going to fulfill the needs. Can you address how this gap is being addressed?
I think this is a start, right? We are, as I said, we looked at many properties and we still continue to look for additional warming centers. These 170 spaces will allow us to get 170 people indoors and getting access to services that may help them transition into permanent housing and open the door for more people to attend the sites. We also have additional spaces opening up within our base shelter system based on our reduction of distancing back to 0.75 within the shelter system. And we're actively looking for additional sites that we believe can help support this response. I think we're trying to just open as many spaces as possible as fast as we can, given our authorities and budget limitations, as well as the availability of real estate across the city.
Thank you, Suhal.
And if I could just add,
Yep.
we are also continuing to take an intergovernmental approach with leaning on the province and the federal government as well to help support our need for additional funding and additional spaces so that we can bring more people indoors.
Thanks, Loretta. Many people on the speakers list, so we're going to go quickly. Ross, we are going to unmute you.
Jane, if I could just add something to Mohan's question.
Sure.
Because I think there's this perception that we're going to be moving people from downtown to Scarborough or North York, right? And the reality is we're not moving anyone unless they would like to go to a warming center that's in North York or Scarborough. We're not forcing people to go out to the suburbs, I guess you could say. But the reality is when we open up these warming centers, and again, we have some data based on our street needs assessment that people experiencing homelessness is everywhere in Toronto. And when we open up a warming center in North York or in Scarborough, it's actually the people, the hidden homelessness, people experiencing homelessness that are surf couching or, at the local Tim Hortons that actually come out and come into the warming centers. And then it gives us an opportunity to connect people to appropriate services because they have decided not to go to a local shelter or a respite for whatever reason. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that, we do see people that are what we call unique to us that we haven't engaged before when we open up warming centers outside of the core.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to go to a live question from Ross and then come back to the email questions. Ross, you have the floor. You can, Andrea, you unmute Ross, please. Not sure if we're having technical difficulties there. In the interim, Ross, while we get that sorted out, I'd like to ask it. There's a couple, again, this is a really quick question. Some people are asking, are the providers of these services being paid a rental fees for the building, like the churches whose facilities are being used? The answer, I believe, is yes. Loretta, there's contract is negotiated, correct?
Yeah, in the case of private market agreements, which a church would fall under, we are paying them a negotiated rental amount. Our corporate real estate management team, that division handles all lease negotiations.
Yeah.
There are public delegated authority forms that outline what that compensation amount was. I think I saw in the chat there was.
That's great, Loretta. That's great. Just yes, they're paid for the space. Ross, you have the floor. You are unmuted. Do you have a?
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I hit it on. But anyhow, what I have to ask is because of your 2017 idealism on picking your assessments, I was wondering what other needs are there in this community for the proximity of services and that for public transit, the size of the space of the. Hello?
Yeah, Ross, I'm a bit unclear. What's the question you're asking?
I'm actually asking from the key findings from your. I understand that this will now go forward and the community will be able to talk about it more from your whatever you did in 2017.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So what I'm asking is why weren't the people of the community informed by Councillor Ansley? We found out about this from a petition a week ago. So I was wondering, when you do your key findings, the councillor is apparently involved in it, is he not?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Ross. Could I get maybe Milton, you could handle this question about how councillors are implicated or in any way involved in the decision-making on a very meta level. Like, what is the role of the politicians in making decisions around warming centers?
I can try to answer that. I think
thank you.
The way the city councils, the 27 report they refer and saying delegated authority to us is that they try to depoliticize the process by delegating the authority to site officers to staff. So as Loretta said, the corporate real estate team actively looks for sites and negotiates with landlords. And once we have secured a site and are confident we're moving forward, that's when we notify the councillors. So the councillors learn about sites very late in the process, especially this year. I think we are hoping through these new contracts and new processes, we can have the same winter sites every year and be able to consult and work with communities much earlier. But in this year, we were very late in the process. We were able to find all these sites, and I think it takes some time for us to get flyers ready and send it out. I think that was our hope, to get it out as early as possible to all of you, to notify you about the process. But counselors, again, they don't make the decision. They are informed. We engage them. We work with them on an engagement plan for the community, but they don't ultimately decide where shelters should go or shouldn't go.
But I think in another way, maybe it may be of interest to people to know that there's ways that counselors weigh in on the general approach to homeless services provisioned in the city. Staff reports come forward, numbers are marshaled, evidence, and the concerns are raised about the fact that people have died of exposure in our city. And so plans get made and policies get shaped by politicians, who then charge the staff with the task of coming up with solutions, recommendations, and plans to address the key concerns, with an objective of a plan laid out by and endorsed by politicians. So, it's not just simply the siting, but before that, a lot of discussion and policy making does involve elected officials. So
thanks, Shane. Yeah, I do want to agree. Yeah, our direction around shelters is given by city council as a whole. I think the purpose of the mandates and the policies they approved was to focus less on individual councilors making those decisions and more as a collective body.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. We are going to go back to the email and chat questions at this time. And a lot of people are wondering about whether these warming centers are permanent fixtures. Will they just be here this year? Will they continue? Will they, what are the odds that they will come back again? Can either Milton or Loretta speak to those questions people have?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So what we tried to do this winter was take a more proactive, multi-year approach when we looked for spaces for warming centers. The city aimed to secure sites that we could potentially return to next year. So it allows us to really plan for the future as opposed to be scrambling. I mean, it was just noted by the gentleman before, Ross, that he only recently found out about his location. The agreement was only finalized and secured in the last few weeks as well, and it does make it incredibly difficult to engage with communities prior to those contracts being secured. We do value feedback, and we do want to continuously evaluate our programs and the locations that we have cited for this winter season, and taking that feedback and those community concerns, and through ongoing engagement, we are hopeful that the space needed for our homeless individuals seeking warmth can be used for the full length of the term of the contracts that have been secured.
Thanks. Could you, either of you, also answer the very quick, direct question about why you don't do warming centers in community centers? Why those facilities are not used as such?
So I can start, Milton, since I'm still unmuted. We've used community centers in the past. For the most part, we use them as a last resort. The reality is, by using a community center, we are taking away from other much needed programming that those communities might depend on, whether it be, swimming or, a soccer club, skating, anything those centers might offer. When we take on the use of those community centers, we are now limiting those other programs that could be used.
Terrific. That's great. Okay, let's go back to the live callers. Arash and Rhea, we'd like you to ask your question. Arash and Rhea, hello. You can speak. And not sure, they're not there. Perhaps we could go to the next one, Jingli. You have the floor, Jingyi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just have a few questions here. So the first one, there's been a petition already. So are you going to address that petition, or will there be any re-evaluation of the warming center, or it's simply no response for that question, for that petition? So that's my first question.
Okay. Does anyone want to take that? Suhal?
I think, as we mentioned earlier, we're happy to work with communities about how to make a site successful. We want to engage with you, want to hear from you, but I think we're not, based on council direction, we don't really engage on the location of sites. Again, this is an emergency response to a crisis in the city of Toronto, and we want to be able to move forward and open the sites as quickly as possible to provide a much needed service. I think we want to work with you to make sure that site is successful, and that is. So I'm not sure what the petition is regarding or what the suggestions were, but if it's related to the location of the sites, I think at this time the city is not considering relocating any of our warming center sites.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I mean about like say not this year, for the following years about the warming center decision. Will that going to help you evaluate the process?
Yeah, I think as Loretta mentions, we take all feedback from community members into consideration. We receive a lot of feedback, and we have to consider it in alignment with all the other feedback we receive at City Council, as well as from the general needs of the homelessness sector as well. We want to have a location in downtown, one in North York, one in different quarters of the city to provide a variety of different services. So yes, we will consider the concerns, and we will actively evaluate the program this year. But again, we want to work with you. We want to hear and understand from your community about how we can make this site successful and work well for this community.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hold you there. We're going to take another question. Patricia Lee. Patricia, you have the floor. Patricia, can
you hear me?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Every day I'm already surrounded by homeless people and disorderly people in my area. I just couldn't afford to move out, so I have to live here and make some complaint. I understand, from my observation, I figure out, so when some resident become disorderly, affecting other residents in the warming center, so would they be removed from the facility onto the streets?
That's a great question. Actually, Patricia, thank you so much for the question.
I am experienced with them.
Okay, thank you. Because we have a number of questions also in the chat and in the email questions that really want to ask what kind of de-escalation training do staff get? And what, importantly, can the community do if they see someone that they think is involved with the warming center, or maybe they don't even know, but it's not unreasonable for people to think this center is nearby, maybe it's associated. What can the community do? And what are staff trained to do at the warming center? Sort of a programming kind of question. Would we want to?
Yeah, I can answer that, Jane.
Hey, thanks, Milton.
And then maybe Monica can loop in.
Yeah.
But I know safety is first one of the top 3 things that come up with any services that we provide, whether it's a warming center, a respite, or a shelter. And as I stated before, security is part of the menu of services. Security has a specific role. They're there to intervene as a last resort, but the staff at the warming center are skilled staff. As indicated, they're trained in harm reduction, verbal de-escalation, and really it's the rapport that they have with individuals that will be successful in the integration of residents in the warming center in the community. But when there is any serious incident, such as violence, specifically assault, we have to take a very serious approach to that, because we have Occupational Health and Safety Act, where employees also have a right to be safe from the workplace. So we will address the issue. I am hesitant to say what the outcome will be, because it's going to be case by case, but it is addressed. We will never discharge anyone to the streets, because that is against our philosophy and our approach, right? We're trying to keep people indoors. It could be very well that they are asked to go to another location. Again, a referral to another space. Could be a warming center, could be a shelter, could be a respite, right? But we address these issues. The reality is, we are the last resort for many folk. We are the safety net. There are folk that probably should be receiving services from other orders of government, other institutions, either due to severe mental health or other reasons. But we are doing our best to support the folk that are in our services. One of the things I often remind folks is that we are not clinicians. We are shelter staff. So with that, we've learned to adapt, pivot, train our staff to respond to situations that unfortunately are now part of the shelter system. But the reality is, we want to make sure people are safe. That means everyone in the site. That means the community as a whole. And when issues arise, like I said, sometimes it's about calling the police as well, right? Because sometimes we have limitations as to what actions we can do. And it's about, unfortunately, calling the police, such as the mental health crisis unit, and having them, do what they can within their jurisdiction. But I'll pause there. And Monica, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
I think you gave a pretty comprehensive answer. We do also, in terms of security guards, are also trained on, de-escalation and rapport building, and we do try and have a social service and de-escalation response before it goes to an enforcement response. And I think mentioned earlier, we will be having TTC buses that are dedicated to help transport people around to different warming centers. So in the event that it's decided that it is no longer good for a particular individual to be at a particular warming center, we will facilitate, or the folks who are running that site will facilitate a transfer to another site where maybe that dynamic does not exist.
Great. Thank you. It also is an add-on to several of the similar questions. And I think people just generally want to know, if they see a needle being disposed of on the street, in a park, on the sidewalk, whether people can ascertain whether it has any connection to the warming center or a shelter or not. What do people do? What can they do? What plans might be in place to address needles disposed of improperly in the vicinity?
So I can take that. So I think first off, I would encourage folks, unless you have specific training for safe disposal of, used paraphernalia, needles in particular, not to handle it yourself. And it really depends on where it's found. If it is found in a city park, then Parks, Recreation, and Forestry through 311 can be contacted for safe disposal. And they're quite quick to respond to those calls, although it isn't like a 911 service. As well, if depending on the area, the Works, which is part of Toronto Public Health, who distributes harm reduction supplies, could also potentially do a pickup. So yeah, again, it depends where it is. 311 would be your best bet.
Okay,
if it's immediately on the property of the warming center, then those staff are trained for safe disposal.
Okay, thank you. Again, very hard to determine where it might be coming from, but it is a question in the chat and in concerns. Let's go to another caller, Neha. is in the lineup. Could you ask your question, Neha? If we can establish you can hear us and you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Clear as a bell.
I just want to know how the city came to a conclusion that it was fair to all the residents of Yonge and Finch to have two shelters within 600 meters of each other.
Okay, thank you, Neha. I'm going to just clarify that this is about the warming centers. And I think you're probably referring to 5800 Yonge Street,
Yes.
which is nearby. So that's a shelter, which is now actually a refugee center, a welcome center for refugees. So that is distinct from a shelter operations.
Okay.
And the warming center is activated really only in cold weather. So they're two very different services. But thank you for the question. I want to actually just ask Milton or Loretta to respond to what is also in other questions, which is how often it's going to be activated, how many people will be accessing it. Like, again, we've covered some of this turf, but people are still asking, extreme weather, how do you define it? So how many people, how often is it going to get activated? What can be expected?
Yeah, so maybe in the sense of activation. So it is a new year for us because we've changed the threshold from -15 to -5. So, one of the things we don't want to do is open and close, because from an operational perspective, it's just challenging to keep opening and closing if there's a day in between that has good weather. So we're looking at a process that would allow for operational ease and sustainability and predictability for the clients who are using these services. So that way they know, okay, based on this process, we know when it's going to close. But in general, -5 or any Environment Canada warning, such as a blizzard or freezing rain, we would open up the warming centers. -5, and that's the temperature, not including windshield. So that's another point of clarification. So that's the temperature. We anticipate that, we will be active for most of the winter season, right? Whether it's through -5 or through extreme weather. The reality also is that we have a lot of refugee and asylum seekers who currently are in other parts of the city who are not accustomed to this type of weather, right? So we're making every possible measure to make sure we bring people indoors. The concern I wouldn't be so much concerned about how frequent these warming centers will be open. The fact is, as we've openly said, once they're open, we know they're going to be utilized and they're going to be at capacity. And then it looks at we're looking at what other measures we can bring forth. One of the things we know -5 is just a typical day in the winter, but has very detrimental impact for someone who is already has comorbidities or social determinants of health. So we want to avoid cold weather injuries, but the reality is that when we go through colder weather, we will look at additional response to adding capacity when we do hit like a -15, our traditional extreme cold weather alerts.
Okay, great. Let's go to another caller. Wen Jun. Can you ask your question? Wen, are you able to speak?
Yes. I'm living in the neighbor of 1500.
Okay.
Yeah.
Willowdale.
Yeah, Willowdale. Yeah. My neighbor is very nice, and you don't see homeless people more here.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. This is a good area. This is a Yonge and the Finch, no Yonge and the Jane. So I am upset about because we don't have homeless people in the neighbor. We are safe. It's really good. But please don't bring the homeless people to here.
Okay.
Make a mess here.
All right. Your comment
You can
is
find you can find somewhere have more homeless.
okay.
Our community is safe and nice.
All right. Now I'm going to actually thank you for your comment. Actually pivot to a comment that we have in the chat or a question, which is why is the city putting these facilities in places that seem far away from this downtown core, such as in Scarborough, up in North Young Street, Willowdale. Several people are asking, there couldn't possibly be homeless people here that need these services. Could you speak to that part, those inquiries? Is homelessness something that is only a downtown issue in this city? Who wants to take that, Milton?
Yeah,
or-
so I can definitely start, and others can build off. Contrary to popular belief, people experiencing homelessness, whether visible or invisible, are right throughout the city. And it's not just a City of Toronto issue. It is, you go north, south, east of Toronto to neighboring municipalities and regions. They're encountering the same situation. We're speaking to each other to just look at options and solutions. But sometimes I also have to go back into time to just remind folks about unfortunate events that happened in the past. A few years ago, there was a coroner's office inquest regarding 2 deaths. And this is public knowledge, and we can send you the links after this. But basically, there were several recommendations, and one of those recommendations was, hey, you need spaces, shelters in the East End to avoid people from dying, right? So of course we had to implement some of those recommendations, and we opened up more spaces in the East End. So learning from a unfortunate event that led to 2 deaths, we want to ensure that that doesn't happen again, and we want to make sure that there are spaces for people to go to all over the city. Just the same way where I'm hearing why our spaces coming to our location is the same thing we actually hear from our actual service users. Many service users don't actually want to go to downtown because of XYZ. So we want to make sure that, hey, people don't have to travel far to get into space. And again, I kind of want to emphasize that, I would feel comfortable enough to say that I'm sure that if you were to go to your local Tim Hortons or your closest subway station or anywhere, a community center, I'm sure you would see people experiencing homelessness, staying indoors as a way of just keeping warm, or just using the washroom as a place to just clean up. And by opening up these spaces, we actually allow folks to stop using or to prevent folks from using those spaces and bringing them into spaces that are appropriate and connecting them to resources that they probably haven't connected to in some time. So that's where I'll stop.
Okay.
And I can maybe add some statistics. We do regular street needs assessments that have basically, given like backup data to demonstrate that homelessness does exist across the city. Our 2021 street needs assessment found that, like, while 51% of the individuals experiencing homelessness were downtown, 13% were found to be in North York and 21% were found to be in Scarborough. So we, like Milton sort of suggested, there's a lot of hidden homelessness out there. A lot of people who are maybe just hanging out in a local Tim Hortons or a library or the shopping mall, or ride in the subway just to stay warm. And a lot of them don't want to necessarily enter into a warming center or shelter downtown. They want to maybe stay closer to the community they might have grown up in, friends or family who might not be able to take them in, but live near those areas, such as in North York or Scarborough.
It actually connects really well to another question we have in the chat, which is someone asking, why are the people who are in known encampments not being helped with housing during the summer? I mean, before there was the crisis in weather and temperatures. Maybe Ryan and also sort of people are curious about encampments. What would happen if someone put up a tent near a warming center? Just out of curiosity, could you address some of those questions, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you for the question. So in fact, Streets to Homes and our funded partner agencies located across the city, we do engage with individuals who are experiencing street homelessness and also staying in encampments. Over the course of the pandemic, Streets to Homes and our partner agencies have referred over 3,000 plus people into indoor space, specifically shelter spaces during this period of time. Just this year alone, we have housed over 265 people who've been experiencing homelessness, and many of them from encampment sites. As some of the speakers noted at the beginning of their presentation, that the pace and the scope of homelessness is vast. The city of Toronto has never seen this much homelessness before. And despite numerous heroic efforts on the parts of many frontline staff, there continues to be an increased demand on shelter space and housing. But I can say with a level of certainty, city staff are working diligently to assist individuals into those housing units as they become available. In regards to the question about encampments that may pop up, as I speak to you right now, there's 270 plus encampments that are active across the city. Streets to Homes and our partner agencies are informed of these encampments, and as a matter of duty, we respond to those encampments and we work with individuals to assess their needs and make referrals and determinations on next steps that align with the client's needs and stated goals. One of the things we do is figure out, hey, how can we support you? Whether that means a referral into indoor space as it becomes available, or we start that housing process. And while I would love to snap my finger and house every single client who would like to be housed, it is a process, it takes time, and there's currently not the amount of housing we would love to see to meet this need. This has been discussed by the mayor herself, who is actively pressing other levels of government to ensure that more resources are made towards the city of Toronto for housing. And I think that answered my question as best I can.
Thank you, Ryan. We're going to go to another caller, Luba. You have the floor. Can you say your question, Luba?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the question is, we asked the explicit question. The decision has been made, and now we get notified. The people who live in here just get notified post factum. We never participated in any discussion. We never knew something is get planned. And now we are facing the fact that actually somebody made a decision to place the people at front of our building and in front of other. I understand the kind of generic answers. We value your answers, we value your questions, but why we haven't participated, why we learn it just now, when the decision has been made, when rent get paid, when the contract get created.
Thank you, Luba. I mean, many people share your, if I'm reading it correctly, your frustration with the process and feeling shut out and not consulted, and there's very little notice. All I can say is that what has been said already in this session by various staff people, which is, yes, the decisions were made very quickly, but there is a process in place that was approved over a longer period of time that set out objectives and, you know, parameters and criteria for the site selection. There is no simple answer to this, but we have said it already, and you refer to it as a sort of generic answer. I appreciate it. It's got to feel that way. Suhal, is there anything else we can add that we haven't said already about the timeline and how, you know, granted, people can't really weigh in on whether they want it to happen or not. Those decisions are taken at a much higher level, but there are ways to engage in community, such as this meeting. Suhal, can you add anything to this?
Yeah, I think just to repeat what I mentioned earlier, this is a city council approved process for staff to help site shelters. And city council did ask us to make a very comprehensive winter plan and find these sites for this year. It just, to be honest, if we did go and ask for each site, I think vast majority of communities, like as I mentioned, shelters would be near community centers, schools, other thing, and majority of residents would say no. And I think having a situation where we don't have the required shelter space creates more challenges for everyone, including our shelter clients who are at risk of many health implications for being outdoors in extreme cold weather, but also to the residents of City of Toronto, where people have to rely on encampments to get safe indoor space, or TDC or other outdoor space, or be in doorways. That's a difficult situation for everyone. I think shelters provide a pathway for people to get much needed service as they transition to more permanent solutions. We are trying to help address this issue and not try to exacerbate it. Rest shelters, warming centers are just one of many solutions the city is trying to enact to address a very complex and difficult situation the city is in.
Thank you, Suhal. We're going to Shadi now. You have the floor, Shadi. Hello.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. My concern is about, I just make it summary. My concern is about that exactly the front of this church in 15 Olive, there's a school bus station for all the community who lives here. So we just want to know, city has any information about that, or how we, because as also there's a construction there, many very crowded place. So how can we solve this issue?
Okay, thank you, Shadi, for your comment. Milton, Loretta?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted clarification on the question. Is it about just the flow or the assessment, in the sense of what assessments we take to ensure that we minimize impact to the community?
Like how people are, how it's determined whether someone can access the site or not.
Yeah, so maybe just building off on, and I avoid trying to repeat the same response, but looking at it from different angles, putting myself in your shoes. So at all our roaming centers, we have a safety and security assessment, just like how we have a infection prevention and control assessment, a quality assurance assessment. There's certain things we just need to have. So the safety and security assessment dictates, okay, you know what, this is the number of guards you need, whether or not, what is the perimeter, to what extension we should go, in the sense of teams that may go outside to the neighborhood. But there's a thorough assessment that's completed for each warming center to determine, hey, what is it that we need to do, and ensuring that, hey, we're minimizing impact to the neighborhood, right? I think it's safe to say that there is some real reservation and concern about having these warming centers at the locations. But I often also want to emphasize, is this about feeling unsafe or uncomfortable? Because often these two get merged into, hey, I'm actually uncomfortable versus unsafe. We do everything possible to ensure the safety of the residents, the staff, and working with the community to proactively respond to any situations that are arising. And it's not just SSHA, it's other divisions and Toronto Police, who's an important partner in all this as well. But Loretta, I think you were going to add something as well.
No,
Sorry.
I think you covered it.
Okay, great. We're coming down. We have 7 more minutes in this session, which is great. So let's keep it there, because I want to fit in as many questions as possible. I want one of you to speak about what community safety teams are. A number of people are asking if there's security guards. And of course, we know that there are security staff inside a shelter. What's on the outside of the warming center? I'm sorry. And if a community safety team is engaged in the work with the warming center, what does it do? And, what's its range? Where does it go? What does it do? Community safety teams. Who wants to handle this? Loretta, Milton?
Yeah, maybe in simple terms, a community safety team is exactly what it sounds like, right? So these are folks, not security guards. These are folks that are trained to deal with situations that may arise outside of the warming space perimeter. As I mentioned before, warming staff have they have a certain jurisdiction that they're responsible for, including the security guards that are attached to that warming center. So depending on the assessment, and again, it varies, it doesn't automatically mean all warming centers will have a community safety teams, but based on our assessment, if we need or we deem that a community safety team is necessary, they do that. They go into the community. So typically we'll work with the community, the BIAs, anyone to determine what is the appropriate map where this community safety team, typically using wearing a yellow vest with a CST at the back, and they just engage folks based on the map that has been predetermined. And the purpose of engaging folks is either to deter and or refer into an indoor space, and or refer to maybe the encampment office or streets to homes, because there might be someone who decides, hey, I don't want to go indoors. Let's connect our streets to homes or encampment office to the folk that may be outdoors.
Okay.
But that's really what that's all about.
And they can be very effective. They're a very effective way to mitigate and interact between, the warming center staff and clients, the neighborhood, so they can be a connective tissue that really assists relationship building and communication lines. So where they're needed and used, they seem to be very effective. People are asking who's paying for all this. Where's the money coming from? Where's the bucks coming from? Milton and Loretta, people want to know, hey, are my taxes going to go up because of these warming centers? Or is the BIA, going to have to pay more money for these things? Who's financing the warming centers? Where's the money coming from? Including the things to do cleanup and safety and security.
I'll take that. The city is paying for the warming centers. It was included as part of our 2023 budget submission, and for the 2024 half of the activation period, it will be covered as part of that submission budget request that we expect to be approved. There is also a request into the other levels of governments to assist with funding our warming centers and other winter response sites as well. But they are pre-budgeted programs.
Great. Someone in the chat is asking if the Elizabeth Street shelter will have a community safety team. Yes, it will. And so we are at a place in our meeting where we're pretty much out of time. We've only got a few more minutes. Councillor Sachs, I believe, has actually joined in the last little bit, which is great to have an elected official here to hear the concerns and opinions. People have been really awesome at this session, I have to say. There is a lineup of people that we're not going to be able to get to who are asking questions, but people have been extremely open and helpful, and just to see all this engagement and concern is really constructive, and I hope this leads to more interaction and better relationships. I want to draw attention to a couple important things also in the chat that came in. People are asking us where they can get information about who to call, flyers and things like that, that would be handy to have on hand once the warming centers open. I'm going to kind of go out on a limb here, but know that we're developing those materials in association with the local councillors to make sure that there is such a flyer developed for each center. A lot of the information for who to contact is the same regardless of where you're situated, but I'm going to say that piece of literature will exist soon and be available through councillors' newsletters and things like that. So a who to call sheet is a really good idea, and we are working on those and to have them available. I also should say that we've had some quite positive comments during this chat. We didn't really want to take up a lot of time with them during the question and answer, but some people are saying that they think the staff of City of Toronto are doing an incredibly good job in a very hard time in the face of very tough constraints and finances. So that's always nice to be able to pass that along to our city staff. We are indeed going to make this presentation available. The whole shebang, the questions and answers, as well as a meeting summary. It'll be posted on the Warming Center's City of Toronto webpage. So you can go there. Again, you can go to that page and sign up for email updates that keep you in touch about everything that's happening with warming centers, including when they're activated and deactivated. So this kind of gets us to the end here. I want to thank the councillor for showing up, Councillor Sachs. And I'd like to ask both Milton and Loretta to just try to have a final word here about what you've learned and can reflect on out of this public info session.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jane. So yeah, no, likewise, I want to thank the Councillor Sachs and Councillor Ainsley's staff, and I think there might be other councillor staff here, but it's always hard to tell when people call in. But I also want to thank you, Jane and Andrea, for facilitating and supporting tech, and of course our city staff for preparing us for today's information session. You know, I know there's a lot of information, sometimes misperceptions or misinformation about just the services that SSHA delivers, but I really want to thank you for taking the time today to listen to the facts, and I'm hoping that so you've taken something out of this. I know there's a lot of questions about why these locations, can we just stop the warming centers? But putting that aside, I hope that you've actually gained some insight about the work we do to get to where we need to ensure that we have critical services for those that need it. At the end of the day, it's about life and death when it's winter, you know. Trying to stay outdoors for a number of hours at -15, -10, even -5 can be terminal for some folks. So we want to make sure we have indoor spaces for them. But yes, I just wanted to thank you for making time this evening to hear us out. This is not the end or the last chance for you to provide input, feedback, or just have questions. As Jane said, we have an email that we will distribute after this session to make sure that we can follow up on some responses. And I think if we didn't answer some of the questions, because there's lots, we'll see how we can also look at responding to some of the frequently asked questions. But
Yeah,
thank
we're
you.
definitely going to be putting more information on the website, you know, specifically about the engagement process, how decisions are made around sites. And of course, some people are asking, how do I volunteer? How do I contribute to the success of the center? And there'll be that information as well. Loretta, I'm not sure if you want to add anything, but that was really good, Milton.
Yeah, I mean, Milton probably summarized everything I would have said anyway, but you know, just to reiterate, thank you all for attending. We appreciate you being here. We recognize this is incredibly difficult for some. It's difficult for us, but we do want to continue to work together with you just to make sure that these spaces are successful in your communities. And you know, like it was said, this isn't going to be the end. We will continue to have conversations together.
Thank you. All right. Thank you much for participating, and get in touch by email if you want to further the conversation.